All right, what is up, folks? Welcome back to another episode of Lifting, Running, and Living with your favorite coaches, Kelly
Hello.
and JK. That is me. All right, we are kicking off episode number 30, and per the
hmm
usual, we are going to start with a breakdown of what is currently going on in the world of politics. I am joking. All right, let's
This will be a
start
long
with
episode.
yeah. Let's let's go ahead and move into updates on what we've got going on. So first, Kelly, what's going on in your world?
Non-political updates. Um, so last if the listeners listened to last episode, I mentioned that I did a sweat test and I was waiting for my electrolyte results, which I got last week, early this week. I don't know. Sometime between last recording and today. We're recording this on Friday, the 19th, for anyone curious. It's not our normal Tuesday.
Yeah.
But so in terms of sweat loss, which I knew last time from just you weigh yourself before and after your run and calculate how much you lost and then try to replace 75% is the guideline. So my loss is 24 to 28 ounces is what they recommend I take in per hour. And then for sodium, which is what I was really curious about, in that 1 hour, for anyone who doesn't remember, it was 68 degrees, 55% humidity. I lost 1,500 milligrams of sodium, which is a lot.
It
Yeah.
sounds like a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying before this to find what the average loss is, but I found different ranges. But
Was
it
that
seems
more
like,
than you expected?
oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Because I think that the in the middle average is right around like 500 to 800. I don't remember if that's per hour or per
wow.
liter of sweat, but
Oh,
yeah. And if anyone's familiar with Element, like the salt electrolyte mix, that has 1,000 milligrams, and that's one of the saltiest that I've ever found on the market. So it's even more than that would replace, which is kind of wild. So
yeah. I I tend to believe that electrolytes have had a massive come up in the last 2 years or so.
mhm.
Like as the folks would say, are definitely in our electrolytes era. Like they are
Yeah, we are.
definitely on the come up right now. It almost seems like it took over for BCAAs once
Mm,
emerging research started to disprove some of the theories or some of the thoughts that branched chain amino acids were necessary, like as necessary as they were being marketed to be. And
yeah.
then it's kind of like then electrolytes were like they're like, okay, you tap out, we'll tap in, and we're taking over. So I will be curious. I'll be just generally curious to see how, like, if they continue to gain in popularity. Are we kind of at the peak? Is it going to regress then? Or, like that sort of a thing? Because it does seem like they're definitely all the rage right now.
Yeah, I think in endurance sports, they'll stay because we are
You
learning
do.
that, yeah, like if you lose too much sodium and you don't replace it, then, like, especially in the ultra running world and longer races, you could be at risk for hyponatremia, which just means like you've diluted the sodium in your blood. Um, and electrolyte imbalance could contribute to like muscle cramps, which plagues a lot of people later in races, especially like in your calves and stuff, or like side stitches. So I think there'll be a lot more evidence coming out, like how do electrolytes influence these things, but it's definitely, at least for runners, something we should be aware of forever. Versus like BCAAs, I feel like they had a moment and then I don't know if this is accurate, but I heard somewhere that like if you're getting in enough protein in your normal diet, then BCAAs are not as useful versus like I guess you could say the same thing about sodium, but like if you're in an ultra, you need to keep track more so of the sodium you're intaking because like normal gels don't have added sodium. Some do, but if you're just picking up a gel, most of your fueling probably doesn't have it, so you have to be a little more intentional with like, okay, how am I going to get this salt? so I don't lose as much.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm not very well versed on an understanding of for the average person what's the recommendation
Mm,
of how much to consume based on X activity level, you
yeah.
know? So if it's like so for somebody who primarily lifts and then does say a couple of days of cardio, 20-30 minutes each, like so for myself, like I have no idea exactly. I've never really broken down, okay, well what's the recommendation or anything like that. So I don't really
Yeah.
know.
I don't really know either.
Perhaps that's
I
something I should look into.
well, the way I'm taking my results is it will influence long runs the most because,
Yeah.
like, for my weekday runs, some of them, most of them are right around an hour, maybe a little more, but in that time, like, I usually come home and drink Element right away. So I'm replenishing the sodium
Yeah.
quickly after, and then, like, throughout the day in my normal diet. Well, I don't know for sure, but I think I'm getting enough salt to
Yeah.
replace it. But it's easier, I think, to replace in shorter bouts. And especially like right now, it's important because I'm sweating a lot and obviously losing a lot of sodium. So I do want to do another test in the fall when it's cooler to see what changes because obviously you sweat less when it's cooler. And in the test, it says that normally when you sweat less, your sodium concentration is higher. So I'll be curious, like, do I lose the same amount of sodium when it's cooler out? Do I lose more? Do I lose less? So that's the one thing with the sweat test is it's not really a one and done. It's like a one, and then I know in the context of that weather roughly what I should be
Oh, good
doing.
call. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
All right. All right.
yeah, but that's really cool. The test I used was Levelin. If anyone's curious, Levelen.
All right.
Yeah.
You'll be in charge of putting that in the show notes per the
I'll put it in
usual.
the show notes, yeah.
Okay.
But people are usually curious because there's a couple different. I know there's Gatorade patches. I haven't tried it, but some people have gotten good results and some people have gotten weird results. So, yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I
All right.
had one friend who used the Gatorade patch and it told her she lost 0 milligrams of sodium like a couple weeks ago. And she was like, that seems wrong. So,
That's 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 a little suspicious. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's a sweat test, and then I did the Vail Hill Climb since we've last spoken, and it went really well. I beat my time from last year by 6 minutes, which is kind
Yeah.
of a lot on a 7.7 mile course. So
So that's a big one.
yeah, yeah, I was excited. It felt better than last year. Part of it was I knew what to expect, so like I knew where it was the worst, and then after that point I knew it wasn't as bad. Right around the middle of the course is where the steepest climbs are,
Okay.
and that like really sucks. But
Yeah,
then
that experience level definitely comes into play, where you kind of already know like where the difficult parts are, where you maybe can cruise,
mhm.
not cruise, but I don't know what the term would be, but kind
Yeah,
of
I mean
get a
cruise could
little bit of
apply.
recover. Okay,
Yeah,
you can cruise, recover a little bit. That's solid. You did an episode on that, didn't you?
yeah, it came
Yeah.
out
Okay, I did listen to that
Wednesday.
one. Yeah, I did
Yeah,
listen
if
to that
anyone
one.
wants more in depth, but yeah, that's
Cool.
really it, I think.
That's your updates for today.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm trying to think if
You
there's anything
sure?
else. I know.
Because the look on your face is not necessarily one of I'm confident. That's all I've got.
That's all I wrote down, but I didn't write down anything since the Vale Hill climb was on the 6th and today's the 19th, so I have no idea what happened in between those two dates.
It's all a blur.
It's all a blur. Um, okay, also, I see that it is now gone, but you had a little label under your name.
I was just messing around with the thing to see if it worked or not. I wasn't totally
I
sure.
saw it as I was talking about the sweat test.
Yeah,
So
I was just moving the mouse
confused.
around and yeah, and then it says add your title when I hold the mouse over my name. So
Oh, yeah. Do you
yeah,
want to tell the
okay.
people what you added?
No, they can pop onto YouTube and check it out
I don't know
if
if
they
it
want
shows on
to.
YouTube.
Well, I guess we'll never know.
It was something about a hairstylist.
Maybe or maybe not. We'll see.
Okay.
All right. Any more
Well,
updates?
anyway, no. What's up with you?
Yeah, I was trying to throw in teasers, Kelly. Let's see here. So, as Kelly mentioned, we are recording on a Friday, and a contributing factor to that was some travel
Hmm.
that I recently did. So, myself, my wife, two kids, we went down to Alabama. My daughter had orientation, so it was a good time for us to be able to not only get her there for that, also spend some additional time with family, as I've got family in that particular area. So, per the usual, solid trip there. Always interesting whenever you do a road trip with the entire family. Like, everybody travels a little bit different.
Hmm.
People handle um, different traffic conditions differently, and things like that. One thing that I, to this day, have always found really, I don't know if you'd call it odd or just like, dang, that's kind of scary, is when there are vehicles that you kind of are like, man, that car is like way too nice to be broken down on the side of the highway. Like, that always bugs me sometimes. Like, if
Why?
there's, so because it's like, dang, if that car didn't make the trip, or am I going to make the
Oh,
trip? Like, no. And I've always thought that no matter what vehicle I've driven, like whether I rented a car, it's been my own car or anything, I always think it's like rather odd. Like, if I'll see like a brand new Escalade, like broken down on the side of the highway, there's a story here. There's definitely a story to tell. Uh, However, fortunately, safe trip there and back. So yeah, that's why we're recording on a Friday. I guess as far as updates go, from a training perspective, still still consistent with lifting somewhere between 4 to 5 days per week. And
mhm.
my program is built, I think I've mentioned this before and just bears repeating. My program is built for 4 days, a lower body, upper body split. And then I have the option through the partnership with my coach where I can take one, or I can do this multiple times, and sometimes I'll take one of those days and just split it in half. Because on my lower body days, because of some spots that I want to focus on a bit more from a muscle building standpoint, we have some upper body work, like 3 or 4 upper body movements planned into my lower body, primarily lower body day. So sometimes what I'll
Mhm.
do is just take the lower body movements, do that one day, and then shift the upper body work to the next day. So that's why it's 4 to 5 days, somewhere around there. And then 2 or more cardio sessions a week. Typically it's two, not more, about 20 minutes. So one of them is more steady state, right around like that zone 2-ish area. And then the other one more like high intensity, some interval type work. So still able to stay consistent with that as I traveled, which is always a nice benefit to have. And I talked about this a bit on a podcast episode, just this concept around like portable habits and being able to take things on the road with you. And that's something that, as I'm been in and out of, I would, in recent memory, this is definitely the most travel that I can recall in a calendar year so far,
Yeah.
that I've had. So I'm getting some good hands-on experience with working through, what are the travel version of different things that I have in place, whether it's training, whether it's nutrition, whether it's sleep, all those sorts of things. So that's been pretty cool. I will say, so far out of so far the major disruption has been the sleep pattern, for sure.
Oh.
Yeah, so far that's been the thing. Now, this most recent trip, a a big contributing factor was a couple of days prior to us leaving. So we went down, when did we go down? We went down on Friday, I think,
Hmm.
and then came back on Wednesday. Yeah, so Friday through Wednesday. So a couple of days before we were leaving, I started like getting basically a little bit of congestion, and still have a little bit of a cough, like sporadically here or there. Nothing like insanely crazy. However, it's definitely showing up in my results, and also like a little bit more fatigued. So I've kind of dialed back some of the intensity on training. but I can definitely say that going back and looking at the data from all of my trips, even going back to like near beginning of the year or March-ish, let's say, where it was like the Arnold in Vegas and things like that. The sleep part, my recovery for sleep on trips is not fantastic. I'm
Mm.
noticing. Yeah. So even though my body, for the most part, wakes up around the same time, it's not as restful. Not as my HRV definitely is not loving me on trips. That I could definitely see. Yeah,
Yeah.
HRV is not loving me on trips. So just just some data that's in the bank. I'll communicate it over to my coach. It's something that we'll keep an eye on. Not something I specifically believe we need to create like major action plan around. It's just one of those like, oh, okay, what are contributing factors to that?
Hmm.
And I think even the later night meals, especially like when I'm traveling, you're up a little bit later, eating a little bit later. And it's not even just the eating a little bit later. It's primarily like what types of choices are made
Hmm.
prior to going to bed and things like that. So those things are definitely affected. So yeah. So that's a bit of an update there. What else? Oh, and just something that I jotted down was appreciation for the functional benefits of training. So as I've as I've continued throughout this year, um, I've tried to take more time to really notice where a commitment to building strength, building muscle, being able to stay uh, with a decent amount of flexibility and range of motion and things like that, like where things like that pay off. Like I had posted something on Instagram a while back where I was like moving a chest freezer, and then this past weekend I needed to shift some furniture, and
Hmm.
it was a pretty heavy chest. Um, I don't even know if it's like a chest or drawers, but it was a pretty heavy thing that I needed to shift on carpet, and it was full too. And I mean, we're talking like a few hundred pounds, and just to be able to have the ability to do something like that, regardless of how ugly it looked as I was doing it, like literally bracing myself against a wall
Yeah.
and like shifting the thing, you know, I won't even say inch by inch. It was more like, 5 millimeters by 5 millimeters, one of those like shimmies
Yeah.
where you slowly but surely, it probably took about 10 minutes to move it a foot.
Uh-huh.
Um, and also just really taking a moment to reflect on, oh, snap. Like that's a reason why I enjoy working out. Like that's one of the payoffs of being able of doing training, of working out. So
Hmm.
yeah, I just wanted to highlight that for those folks who sometimes it's really easy to get caught up in only specifically like the performance. Like I either did or didn't hit the goal that I wanted to hit, or from an aesthetic standpoint, like I'm either where I want to be or I feel like I've got a lot of work to do. It's like underlying in all of that, proper training and nutrition pays off benefits that may not necessarily show up in the record books or in a photo. It may be something that really contributes to overall quality of life too, because I experienced that. So just want to pass that on. All right. Any questions or anything? The
I have a
updates?
question. Are you still doing your in-person coaching on Thursdays?
I am. Yeah. So I'm still
Oh.
teaching a class, well, three classes. So we've got a 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and 7 a.m. on Thursdays. So I do still do that. Yeah. Still
Cool.
rolling since September, I think it was.
Yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
while.
Started. Yeah. And I mean, as far as I'm aware, things are going pretty well. The feedback from people that do that particular program is pretty good. So what it is for those who aren't familiar, kind of with what the scenario is at the gym that I go to, is on one side it's a barbell club, and then on the other side it's a CrossFit box. So it's essentially like two businesses under one roof, but all same owner and all that stuff. And I was given the opportunity near the end of last year to create a basically a workout of the day that would be used each Thursday. no matter what the class was. So whether it's the morning class, afternoon, or evening. So yeah, I call it Physique Wad, and it
Mm.
takes, it takes really the principles of hypertrophy, and then tries to introduce it in a way that is still engaging for folks that primarily would be doing CrossFit.
Mm.
So that's really the thing. It's been interesting because some of the feedback that I'll get from people is like, hey, I love this because this is like my active recovery day. And
Oh.
yeah, and
Hmm.
to be as transparent as I want to be, at first I was like, what do you mean active recovery? Like this is we're we're
That was
doing
my
like
reaction.
we're doing like RDLs, we're doing split squats, we're doing
Yeah.
single arm presses. Like it's no joke. And
Uh-huh.
also I took a moment just to kind of think, okay, well, what type of direction do I give and things like that. And early on, when I first introduced the program to the classes, I talked about the principle of autoregulation. So
Mm.
understanding RPE scales and how different that was than walking in and seeing, okay, am I doing RX or am I doing scaled today?
Mm-hmm.
So even walking through the process of, for example, we were going to be doing 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps, even walking through the process of, okay, well, 10 to 12 reps is the range versus, okay, are we doing 4 rounds of 30 this, 20 this, and 10 this? And males use 75, females use 50. It was like, that's not how this is programmed.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding intensity, and, you can go as hard as you want to go today. You can go as light as you want to go today. So use it in a way that would best benefit your goals, and also understanding the week that you have had currently and how you want the rest of the week to go. Because a decent amount of the folks are doing CrossFit probably 4 to 5 days out of the week. So I
So
want them to
many
be able to
days.
integrate. Well, I want them to be able to integrate this with
Yeah.
that. I will say that the CrossFit programming at our box is pretty intelligently done. They use the NC Fit programming. Those that are in the CrossFit world will know what that is. So they use the NC Fit programming for the most part, which programs in like blocks and is typically pretty well done for their class programming. So this integrates really well with that. So yeah, I'd say one of the biggest benefits of being back in person has been being able to um, validate what I'm hearing from my clients and some of the things that I believe I'm observing on social media too. And then being able to get an understanding of, okay, am I hearing the same things in person that I'm also getting virtually on Zoom calls with my clients, or, the algorithm is showing me?
Yeah.
And it is, I will say it's it's represented pretty well. Like some of the same questions, same, like certain topics are really popular online. It's like the hot topic conversation inside the gym, like same thing.
Mm.
Yeah. It's just cool to be able to be in an environment where you can actually ask the follow-up question.
And have someone answer.
Yeah. Well, yes. Not even just have someone answer, because, people online will answer and it might even
Yeah.
be like a nonsensical answer. So you're just
A
trying
lot
to
of them don't
like,
answer you though.
wait, what do you mean? What are you
I'm
talking
talking
about?
about like on threads.
Yeah, no, they don't. They don't at all.
Because for
Hmm.
anyone curious, since I
So,
follow JK, I see
yeah,
JK's responses to all
that's
these
right. Because
other
you see my
threads.
replies. Yeah.
Yeah. But sometimes I just see it too early if they do reply. But I think there's maybe been once that I've seen a reply to your reply. Because you
You're
always ask a
so spot
question.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're so spot on. Um, I may have I think I talked to Carly about this when I had her on my podcast, with
Yeah,
how
you did.
threads is so interesting to me. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Threads is funny.
yeah. Generally, I like the I like that it's thought provoking. I'll give
Mm,
it that much. Yeah, but
yeah.
still, the general assessment that I would have is the information is only about as good as the question that's asked.
Yeah.
which I think has been across the board, like no matter what. Like the
Oh
information is
yeah.
only good as the question asked. Like when we talked about AI, like garbage in, garbage out,
Yeah.
pretty much.
That's why
Yeah,
AI is
there's.
not threatening
Mm,
to coaching. I don't Okay, we're not going down this route. I
okay.
think if I had to say it's threatening or it's not, I'm choosing not threatening. Obviously, it's somewhere in the middle.
I'd have to. I don't know. I'd have to table that
We can table that.
without turning it into like a it depends.
I mean, it isn't. It depends. Everything's an it depends, but
Well, yeah, yeah. I'm also trying to get better at like pick a side of the fence to answer the
um,
question and then go in from
yeah,
there. So yeah. Anyways,
yeah. Anyway,
those are I'm not covering the last one. So those are my
what?
updates.
You're not going to talk
Uh,
about whatever you're reading?
no, I'm moving on.
Okay.
I'm all
I
good.
thought of an update that I did not
Yeah.
write down.
What you got?
I have signed up for 2 more races this year.
Oh, okay.
Uh huh. They're both road 5Ks, and they are in the same spot. So, City Park in Denver, for anyone curious. Um, yeah, it's October 27th and November 16th. So, it'll be nice. They're 2 weeks apart. So, the first one will be like good practice, I think. Just getting acclimated to the course and then knowing what to expect so I can apply it better for the second one.
All right. So two 5Ks coming.
Yeah, so if anyone's in the area, I have codes for each.
Well,
You
you
get
have
$2
affiliate
off.
codes?
Yeah, technically they have like an ambassador program. If you sign up for a race, you can generate an ambassador code.
Is that a good idea for coaches to have those?
That's a good segue.
Thank you very much.
Yes. For races, I think yes. But for anyone who is like really confused, we're talking about should coaches have sponsors
All right. And there's our
today.
transition.
Yeah.
So
So
let's roll.
we kind of teased it a little bit when we had the awesome sauce discussion because Jason Koop, uh, a very well known ultra running coach, has very strong opinions on whether coaches should have sponsors or not. Um, by the way, did I tell you the latest update with Awesome Sauce?
Did you tell me the latest update? You did not. The last thing that I'm aware of is that they kept a similar calorie count by increasing the fats.
Okay, yeah, that's
That's
the
the
latest
last thing
update.
that I've heard about. Is
Yeah.
that
Did we talk about it on here?
I don't believe so. No.
Okay, very quickly for anyone listening. Awesome Sauce reformulated, and mostly I just want to say this for anyone who is not familiar with the whole drama, although if you listen to us, you're probably familiar. But they reformulated, so it's still 180 calories, but there are now, I believe, 7 grams of fat in the form of avocado oil. So if you were using Awesome Sauce before, it was like an all carb gel, and now it is carbs and fat. And so if you're going to be using the new formulation, beware your stomach might not handle it well because that's a very big change, especially for fueling on a run, not when you're just like chilling.
Yeah, and you said it's 180 calories total.
Yeah, yeah. My suspicion is they wanted to keep that number the same, so they just changed
That's interesting. Yeah, so
whatever else they needed.
that's a third of the calories coming from fats.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
It'll be interesting if anyone uses them anymore. Um,
Has there
but
Are you aware of any information that they've put out regarding why they chose to maintain the caloric number by increasing the fats versus fixing the carbs issue?
well, my suspicion is they can't fix the carb issue. Like the math just
Because of
doesn't
the
make
natural
sense.
sources or whatever that they use.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's avocado and MCT oil. I forgot MCT oil, but like if you're still, I would argue that MCT oil maybe not a, you know, a. I don't know their exact verbiage, so I could be wrong, but they usually tout themselves as the real food option, but I don't feel like
Yeah.
MCT
Interesting.
oil is real
Okay.
food. Um, but yeah, because with the ingredients that they were using, because my understanding was like they used rice, for example, and they wanted to use that instead of rice syrup, which would be more calorically dense and carb dense for like the amount that you have to use. But the rice syrup is no longer like real food, you know?
Right, right. Okay.
Um,
Well, before we
so
turn
yeah,
this into Awesome Sauce Gate Part 2,
I know. But
we'll
the
we'll
math doesn't
redirect.
make, they can't get to 180 with the ingredients they were using,
Gosh,
basically.
it's so interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
All
so
right. Yeah.
but
Maybe somebody
anyway,
will do a deep dive on
yeah,
part
I'm
2.
maybe there'll be a documentary one day.
Oh, there will. There will be. There's a
I don't know.
documentary
I don't
for
know
just
if
about every
it's
situation.
yeah, but I don't know if it's like dramatic enough. It's like a very niche community. You know, it's not really like affecting that many people. It's not like these cult documentaries that are so fascinating.
Unfortunately, I believe that once you either have somebody who's high level who gets injured, or somebody who's high level who's already been injured
Hmm.
can point to that particular product being a major contributor to it. Once that happens, then the interest will grow
Yeah,
and somebody will likely fund. Because I think it just comes down to the funding
yeah,
and
that's
who it
fair.
happens to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So funny you should say that because one of their, I don't know if she still is, but a sponsored athlete who was only fueling with Spring just posted in her story the other day that she has been fueling with Precision and Science and Sport. And there was another one, I don't remember, but they all have like their carb counts match what they say on the
Yeah.
the label. And her story was basically like, I didn't know what I was missing. I feel so much better using this now.
Oh,
Yeah. And
rip.
she's a pro runner.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
All right.
So
So let's
anyway,
let's talk coaches having sponsorships.
yeah. So Jason Coop's argument, we'll start there, is that coaches should not have sponsorships because coaches are supposed to be impartial and supposed to be like guiding our athletes with like the science and figuring out what would be best for them, not being influenced by like where are we getting money from or what kickbacks are we getting. So
Okay.
that's his whole argument. Um, I think that one place we should start is like what is a sponsor? Because
Okay.
some people listening might be like, Kelly, you have a bunch of codes.
Yeah. So what say you on that
Yeah.
then? So what's your,
So
for the sake of this discussion, what are you using as how you're defining a coach who has sponsors?
so I think a sponsor is someone you get some sort of income from. Um So like any codes that I have, I don't really get anything from it. I mostly get codes so that it's okay. I usually get codes from things I'm already using. So we're using like let's say Precision, for example. I fuel with them. I really like them. I already recommend it to my athletes. So like I'll reach out to a company and be like, "Hey, do you have a discount code that I can offer my athletes because I'm already recommending they buy this?" So like I want if I can get a discount for them, great. So that's like most of what my codes are. It's not like you sell this much, you're going to get a payout. Mine's just like, hey, if you guys want to try this, I have 10-15% off for you kind of thing. So I feel like it's slightly different than if you are financially incentivized to sell something. Obviously, according to like Jason Coop's argument, that can still introduce bias. But
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
So, and to be clear, are you talking specific financial benefit, or are you also talking like you also get a code, or not you also get a code, you also get a discount. So it's almost like an affiliate discount. Like, so
mm.
for like, why are sentences very, very difficult at the moment?
It's the end of
So
the week.
yeah. So the say your athletes get 20% off with your code,
Hmm.
you get 50% off. So that I would put that under the same
Hmm.
umbrella, right?
Yeah, I would say that's similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if you're being compensated with product.
Hmm.
So each month, in order to keep a sponsored box coming your way, like every month you get a box from this
Yeah.
particular sponsor as long as you post like 4 times a month or
Yeah.
something like that. I would just consider any form of reimbursement
Hmm.
overall, any form of reimbursement or benefit, I would
Yeah.
say. Then okay. And okay, so his stance is that coaches should have no affiliations there whatsoever. So no
No.
benefit should come from. And what's the general argument with that is because it makes it too easy to be biased, or that inherently means you're going to be biased.
Yeah, that's like the subtext, I think, is
Okay.
like you're
And I
going
don't
to be.
necessarily want to make it all about just only his opinion. I think I'm just trying
Well, I
to
think his
understand.
opinion is probably one that people hold. Like he's not the
Yeah.
only one, you know. His opinion really came about with like podcasts.
Okay.
Um, because he like makes a big deal about his podcast has no sponsors, so it's like something he's putting out just for the information to get to the people. So
Yeah.
it's like he's not accepting outside money from anywhere. But I think in this day and age, it also expands just coaches in general, similar to like your and Kylie's conversation about coaches kind of becoming influencers and where
Right.
is that line. But yeah, I I feel like I understand his point of view because there are bad actors out there who will, just recommend whatever they can get money from and not
Right.
care about like how it's going to affect people. And I think he cares most about like supplements, things that
Okay.
don't have
Which
as
is
much
generally,
backing.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
generally going to be the the thing that
Yeah.
is mostly being touted. You'll have apparel
Yeah.
and things
But I
like
feel
that
like
come into
that
play, but
matters less because it's so like it's I don't know, just because I mean, I guess it could for shoes for runners, it could be a thing like,
hmm for sure.
but yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's not as cut and dry as he tries to make it out to be.
Yeah.
And he actually had an episode with one of the other coaches within the organization where he works, talking about it, and the other coach was basically like, "I see your point of view, but it's also like a very privileged point of view because he's built up his coaching to where he doesn't need outside money from anywhere else versus like newer coaches or coaches who haven't built up their practice as much. Like, yeah, maybe it's nice to get some extra income that you know is coming from,
Right.
you know, products you already use. And that, like, if you have a built up audience that people are going to buy, and then why shouldn't you also get some benefit?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent um argument or point of view that the other person brought up. That's an excellent point in that
Yeah.
conversation because I like that particular point being brought up because what it does is it shines light on the position from which that person is sitting making that
Hmm.
particular statement. Like it's very from my perspective, it's very easy to say to people like I could easily say like I could take the same point of view because I don't have sponsors.
Hmm.
Like I don't have yeah, I don't have a discount code for anything. I haven't been approached to have a discount code for anything or anything even resembling that.
Yeah.
So there's, it's easy for me to say like, hey, beware of coaches who have like 52 different codes for
Hmm.
a discount in their bio and all these other things because I don't. And also, I have not been offered that. It's super easy for me to say.
Yeah.
To me, it's along the same lines. It's a very parallel argument for me to say, blast a whole thing with like, hey, just because somebody's got 1 million followers doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. That could be a red flag because I don't have 1 million. I don't even have 5,000 followers.
Hmm.
So it's easy for me to make that argument.
Yeah.
Where I come from on this particular issue would be more on the side of it comes down to the education of the consumer.
Hmm.
And where I have an issue with the coach and in these cases would be if they're not disclosing the affiliations that they have.
Yeah.
I don't have, like, I think that coaches having sponsors is actually almost like I can't think of the term for it, but it's like a term where a business has to make it apparent that they have certain like affiliations, or maybe it's
Mm.
a disclaimer. I can't, there's a name for it. It's just totally escaping me
Yeah.
right now. But just like a transparency clause or something like that, just so that you know. So it's like I listen to this podcast called T-Boy, the best one yet. Yeah, each morning, and they talk about financial news and investing from a
Mm.
kind of a pop culture standpoint. They do it in like a
Oh.
fun kind of a way, and so they'll cover the three biggest news stories in business and finance, and they do it in a very like poppy, sort of way. And at the end of the episode, regardless if they've talked about any business, like they'll talk about Chipotle and the whole scandal with Chipotle,
Mm.
underserving people,
Yeah.
or what's going on at Netflix. If they've invested in any of those companies, like they personally are invested in any of those companies, at the very end of the episode, they'll say like, we are shareholders in Chipotle and we are shareholders in whatever, or so-and-so is a sponsor of this show.
Hmm.
So I think the disclaimer, that's what so I think as long as the disclaimer is there and you're aware that the coach is receiving some sort of compensation, some sort of benefit,
Hmm.
then I don't see a problem with it at all. Like not in the least bit.
Yeah. I agree. I feel like
Yeah.
there's a way to have sponsors or affiliates and not have that be a conflict of interest, especially just like you're saying, if you're like very upfront. I think that some like red flags are if that those sponsors change a lot within like the same realm of product, um, or like a coach you've never heard them talk about something before, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever,
Blowing it
kind of
up.
thing. Yeah. And you're like,
Yeah.
I've literally never seen you use that. So like then it comes into like, can you trust that person? And I think that's like a lot of what we deal with influencers. It's like, do you actually like this product, or are you just being paid to make this reel or TikTok or post or
Yeah.
whatever? So I think those can be like some red flags for coaches with sponsors, but I don't know. For the most part,
Yeah.
from what I've seen, it's just like, at least what I've tried to do is like, I use this. I'm going to reach out and see if I can get a discount code for my
Yeah,
people.
that makes sense. I think
Yeah.
that a great idea that I would really be interested in is that when someone is sponsored and they announce the sponsorship, that at the beginning
Hmm.
of that relationship beginning, that they also announce the ending of that relationship,
Oh,
so that they clarify without, they don't need to get messy with it.
yeah.
I think that something that would um, expose clients and athletes and consumers, really consumers, because if we're talking about products of any sort, I think
Yeah.
something that would expose them more and inform the consumer more is them getting more of an understanding of why the partnership started. I mean, you know, whether it's through a podcast or through a YouTube channel or something. I mean, there's always some sort of a social media channel that's attached to these sponsorships.
Hmm.
So, it's very common for example, on YouTube, it's like, and I'm proud to announce that I'm now partnering with so-and-so. I've been
Hmm.
using their product for years and blah, blah, blah. And then sometimes what I'll observe is about 6 months later, then all of a sudden they're just no longer talking about that
Yeah.
anymore. And in some cases, with some of the influencers and coaches that I'll watch pretty consistently, for example, on YouTube, what'll happen is like, let's say they start a partnership in January, and
Hmm.
then right around the summertime, you just kind of notice like, oh, I guess they haven't really posted an ad for, that supplement in a while. And
Yeah.
then, so that fizzles out. You notice it around the summertime. Because usually I
Mm.
notice when they start, it's like hard and heavy, you know, two
Yeah.
to three mentions per episode, like that sort of a thing. And then it kind of fizzles out maybe a little bit. And I think some of that has to do also with some of the agreements that some of the companies will have for how often they need to mention it or post it, whatever that may be.
Yep.
But then it fizzles out, right? And then, so that happens around summertime. And then like a year later, you'll see the dramatic thumbnail. It's like, why I had to say goodbye to Ace
Yeah.
Hardware. It's like, oh, didn't realize that there was so much drama going on. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's because of NDAs and you have to wait for an NDA to expire or whatever it may be. I do
Yeah.
think that if someone wants to act in the best interest of the population that they serve, then I believe that a good rule of thumb to operate from or operate by as someone who has zero sponsorships is to, just as much as you announce that you are partnering, then also if you decide to discontinue the partnership, then you can also say, okay, you may have noticed over the past couple of videos, haven't mentioned X product. Still a big believer and supporter of the brand. Just from a business standpoint, it was no longer beneficial for me.
Hmm.
So, especially when you move to a different product,
Hmm.
because when you don't say anything, it leaves a lot of gaps for people to fill in.
Yeah.
It totally leaves gaps for the consumer to fill in. So I think that's something that could be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think for the most part, I think that any fueling or supplement are the sponsorships that should be under the most scrutiny for coaches.
I agree.
Because,
I
like,
Yeah, we're in agreement on this one.
yeah, shoes, apparel, whatever, poles, packs.
So in the realm that I'm in, which is trainers and then a lot of nutrition coaches,
Hmm.
I brought this up before when you mentioned this particular topic. There are a decent amount of partnerships. So if I think it off the top of my head, if I think of the people that I am acquainted with or actual like friends with who have some sort of like um, a pretty decent level of influence,
Hmm.
um, a good, let me say more than half of them that I'm aware of are involved in partnerships that aren't publicized at all. So say
Oh,
for example, they, what's an example that I can use without putting somebody's business like out there, because it's not something that's done maliciously in any way, shape or form, like at all. It's more like, um, they go to, I don't know, they go to a particular gym and that gym gives them a free membership, let's say. So they get
okay.
a free membership. So that's the gym that they're always working out at. That's where they take their videos. That's where they post. And then that gym also sells primarily a certain supplement brand.
Okay.
And so that particular person, like low key, will will use that particular protein and maybe it's in the corner, like when they're taking a shot or whatever it may
Yeah.
be. And so when somebody just kind of reaches out and says like, hey, do you have any recommendations? And the person will say like, yeah, I primarily like to use brand X.
Hmm.
And that's primarily because they go to this gym and they don't want to jack up the relationship that they've got with that particular gym because they're getting a $200 a month membership for free. And if
Yeah.
they were to promote some other brand, then that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's
Oh,
affiliations and
interesting.
partnerships like that
Yeah.
that I don't think are necessarily as understood. It's
Yeah,
kind of
because
like you
it's
don't,
like an indirect.
yeah, like an indirect relationship. Like
Yeah.
you don't want to screw over your boy. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So I think that's kind of a thing too.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm trying to think if I know of
Yeah.
any situations like that, like in the running space.
Yeah, it's because it's like it's even though you're not directly compensated by that in the example that I used, you're not directly compensated by that particular supplement company. You basically are like, well, yeah, I'm going to recommend that company because why am I going to jack up a good thing? Like
Yeah.
I'm saving $250 a month on a gym membership. Like that would be wild.
Yeah. In those situations, do you think or do you know that it's explicitly stated, like, don't recommend other brands, or is it
It's
like,
not. No, it's
okay.
not.
I feel
Yeah.
like that is kind of different.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I'm also aware of some other ones that are definitely more direct.
Hmm.
Like if like somebody is uh like down the road they're looking to partner and they're like developing a particular program, a particular course, like that sort of thing, like down the road. So they
Hmm.
recommend like, hey, if you need help with training, like go to this particular person or this particular company.
Yeah.
And behind the scenes, they're developing like projects together and things like that. And that may not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily be something that they really publicize. There's like how in the NFL they they use this term like called the coaching tree.
Hmm.
And what well, really in any sports. However, in the NFL is where I hear about it the most. So like right now, there's like 4 or 5 head coaches who sprang from like the Shanahan coaching tree. So like the head coach of the 49ers, at some point, the head coach of the 49ers, the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, the head coach of the Rams, and the head coach of the Dolphins if I remember correctly. I think that covered
Hmm.
everybody. Maybe even the head coach of the Falcons. I think Raheem Morris was on that group too. All 4 or 5 of them, however many I just named, they were all assistants underneath the same head coach at one point.
Okay.
And so then when they go on to be like very successful, I mean, they're all head coaches at this point, then it's considered like the Shanahan because the
Oh,
dad was Shanahan and then there's like Shanahan the son and whatnot. So it's
yeah.
like that coaching tree. So they grow out. Um, as I'm now entering or about to finish up like my 9th year in the fitness industry as a professional, people are a lot more linked than I had ever realized.
Mm,
Like it's like the like less than 6 degrees of separation.
I believe that.
Yeah. So I think sometimes that can lead to particular alliances and partnerships and recommendations. I know that skews a bit different. That skews quite a bit differently. And also I've always been somebody, let me rewind that. As far as I remember, like I've always been. Nah, there was that time when I was 7 that I was not like that. Um, far as I remember, as far as training goes, I try to be really transparent about where my biases are, especially from a relationship standpoint.
Mm,
So, for instance, like somebody reaches out to me and says, like, "Hey, I'm looking into, you know, I'm a lifter and I'm looking to get into possibly training for a half or a marathon or an ultra." Duh. I'm telling them to call you. Like I pass on, and I've had people reach out, and so I'll pass on your profile. Like that's what I'm gonna do.
yeah.
Like that just, and I let them know, hey, here's who I recommend. Here's why. They also happen to be podcast partner and friend.
Yeah.
And then I just make it like I make those alliances known. Or yeah, like along those lines. Because what I don't like, and I've been in this situation before, is when somebody will recommend a person to me for
Hmm.
some sort of a service and not tell me that they had an affiliation with that person. And that was
Oh,
one of the drivers.
yeah.
Yeah. Because
That's fair.
it's not a overwhelming, it's not a majority of the experiences. And it was enough to leave a bad taste in my mouth
Hmm.
to where I'd reach back out and I was like, hey, I'm gonna be straight up with you. Like the work that they did wasn't like great.
Yeah.
Did you notice when they did work for you? Did you notice blah blah blah? And they're like, oh yeah, well so and so's always been like that since I've known them. Like, as you know, when we went to high school together. I'm like, oh okay.
Ooh.
You could have mentioned to me that that was the driver
Yeah.
behind your yeah. So that was on me though. I didn't do enough research. So now I've learned when I reach out to somebody, I let them know what I'm looking for, why I'm looking for it. And then when they recommend a person, I ask them, so why do you recommend that I work with them specifically? Like based on
Yeah.
what I shared with you on what I need done, why do you think they're the best fit? And that also releases some pressure from the person because I've had people respond before with like, well, I know a guy would be straight up with you though. Like, I'm not sure he's going to be the best fit. I just know him to be a
Yeah.
really good person. So you should at least like reach out to him. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like,
Yeah.
I get you there. Yeah. I
That makes
definitely
sense.
took like that a little different direction, but
We always take it in different directions.
yeah.
I also think that there is a difference in how a coach uses their sponsorships.
Okay.
So I feel like what you were talking about, like relationships not being publicized, kind of made me think about I'm sure there are a lot of coaches out there who, like, kind of similar to me, either like get discount codes or work with companies specifically for their athletes versus like on Instagram giving out codes or on their podcast being like, this is our podcast sponsor. So I feel like those are also different situations.
Yeah. Okay.
Because, like, in my mind, well, I guess it depends how you want to show up on social media. Because just thinking back to like Coop's argument is that if you're a coach putting out information, you should be like an unbiased source kind of thing. But like, I don't know. If someone I don't know comes to me and is like, what would you recommend for a protein supplement, for example? I'm probably going to give them a different answer than like one of my athletes that I know intricately. I know like about their life, what they're looking for, and all that. Um, and like maybe I'll ask this random person more questions, but I'll probably just be like, this is what I use. Doesn't mean it'll work for you, but also to be clear, I have no affiliations with any proteins. But
Yeah.
like I feel like it's different when you're using a sponsor because you have a big audience and you're just like giving it out to the masses versus a sponsor to use with your the group of people you know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. It does make sense. I think the coaches should not have any sort of a bias thing is that one's kind of bugging me. And the
I don't think it's
reason
possible.
I agree. I agree. And I'm trying to like kind of dissect it without like going microscope level
Yeah.
with it. Um, I'd be curious to ask like where does that point of view come from? Like help me understand why
Hmm.
you have the perspective that from what it sounds like that a sponsorship makes it difficult or impossible to maintain integrity in your recommendations. Like, what's the deal?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I also have that question. Yeah. So I feel
Yeah,
like even without a sponsorship, like if I'm talking about fueling with an athlete, for example, I
right,
do have my personal bias on what I use. And I'm never going to be like, use this because I use it. But it is like a bias in the sense that I'm familiar with certain products over others. So, like when I mention things to athletes, would be like, well, I know about these. We're trying to get your carbs up, for example. Maybe try like these. And it's not like a bias that's malicious. I'm not getting anything from it. I'm not trying to harm the athlete. I just don't know every product on the market, but like we all have things that we've personally used or like
right.
we've heard about, we've had experiences with, we've seen athletes have experiences with. So,
Yeah, I think that the more that I digest that that general argument of what seems to me to be like sponsorship equals bias, then I get more curious. Yeah, definitely about where that comes from. What have been the majority of experiences that you've had with coaches who have sponsorships? I know you said that he had spoken out against some team or some group. What
two
is it? The
individuals, the
Roaches?
Roches, yeah,
Roaches. Okay.
who
Um,
do have sponsors. So, I think
yeah,
a large root of the issue is like his bias against them. So
Right. And as somebody who just within the last couple of weeks put out an episode talking about like essentially like, hey, pay attention to when a particular coach starts talking more about like their affiliations and sponsorships and codes in the bodies of their emails than they are like actual their concepts and their teachings and different things like that. Like I think we legit talked about that. Or just
you
like,
did, yeah.
when you're starting to notice that that's starting to overtake, then that could be potentially a problem. The difference is, I'm not saying when somebody has codes in their email, that means that they're biased. What I'm saying is pay attention. So to me, it still goes back to two things. One, as my friend Mike says, like you pull back the curtain and show the consumer, the client, the reader, the whatever, the watcher, show them what's going on. And two, I don't think that's a sponsorship issue. That's an integrity issue.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like now that I really like let it kind of sink in a bit more, like that's yeah, I don't lean towards agreeing that coaches shouldn't have sponsors because it leads to bias. Like that, yeah, I don't know. Because because then you essentially are like, okay, so if you have a particular product, how would you suggest that how would you suggest that those companies grow their business? Like, how would you suggest that they do that? And then from a coaching standpoint, if you have a coach that believes in a particular product and enjoys that particular product and has tested it against a few things, and what if they have multiple products that they really enjoy that are under the same category, and they've been offered the opportunity of like, hey, we'd like to offer your people a discount code if they buy our product, like that sort of a thing. I don't know. I think when you get to like the level of you're talking about like having the name of a supplement company like sewn onto your racing bib or something like that, I think that's a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause that tends to have like more permanence to it, or is that even the right tense? I don't know, but
I think so.
yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I don't tend to agree with this one. That's my general verdict, because I think it speaks more to I think it speaks more to like there's potentially like some experience or something that's been observed that's left a really bad taste in the mouth. And now going forward, it's like, well, that's a sign of somebody being like having lacking integrity or something like that because they have sponsors, which is like that plays really well in today's climate. That plays really well where we
It
want to
does.
like be super binary about certain things. So it's like, well, if
Yeah.
this person, has this in their bio, then I know 37 other things about them. That means that they're this person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of politics. Yep. So,
Yeah.
all right. Anything else on this one?
Well, just to be
Yeah.
clear for the listeners, we're not saying anything bad about the Roches. Just they do have sponsors, but I think
Oh,
they
yeah.
act with integrity with how
I'm
they
definitely
speak.
not, because I have no idea who you're talking
Yeah,
about. So,
I listen to the SWAT podcast, so I listen to their podcast and like
okay.
their ads for what they're sponsored about, and I think they do a really good job of being like, this is why we like it. This is like situations that maybe you should try it, but like also situations where you maybe shouldn't try it, kind of thing. Even if like I personally don't agree with the product, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Cool.
But yeah. Oh, one last thing. I
Mm-hmm.
think that where this also, I don't like the argument is like for pro, semi pro, sub elite runners who, kind of like we were talking about before, like kind of need that extra money because they're either running is their job and maybe they're like running and coaching, because there are a handful of, pro runners or elite, sub elite that also coach. But
Mm-hmm.
like as a runner trying to make it to, you're gonna have sponsors, so like you can't really separate the two. I mean, you could like, your sponsors are there, doesn't mean like you use them in your coaching, but yeah, just like you were saying, just because someone does have a sponsor doesn't mean they're going to use it with malintent.
Yeah. I again totally agree with you. I think it's I mean it from a debate standpoint and or like an engagement from a social media engagement standpoint, um, to state that opinion, like it's stated really well because what doesn't play well is to play like both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
So you got to be on one side or the other. So I'm on the other side of that fence. Sounds like he's on, you know, the one side, and that's what usually plays well, and that's what gets people talking and all that stuff. So still, at the end of the day, I think that with a decent amount of clarity and transparency around why you use a coach may use particular products or why a coach may promote particular products, then I think that it's all good. And then it
Yeah.
comes down to the integrity of the individual. That I don't know. So that's where I stand.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
All right.
that's all we got.
That's all we got. Okay.
Do
Let's
you
see
want to talk
here.
about all the episodes you've been releasing and help me
Uh,
understand?
I've been yeah. I don't even I've released a decent amount like on a clip here, so I'm not
Yeah.
even. I know I just did the one with Kylie.
That
Just
one's
to
really good.
well, appreciate that. Yeah, she's we're friends, so that definitely does help
Yeah.
in having those conversations with people that you have a personal relationship with, and also she's ridiculously good at what she does. So there you go. There's my affiliation that I'm that I'm making known. Um, and I think the most recent one that I just put out was just some conversation around the 80/20 rule,
Yeah.
that stemmed from a client conversation. I've got a couple of other topics that are in the hopper. One around like the phrase like trust the process. Definitely going to talk about that.
Oh.
And then I've got to go back and actually read through it. And there was it was either, I think it was a study experiment, something along those lines that was done about goal achievement and the difference between two groups being told, one group was told basically that they can't do something, and the
Oh.
other group was told that they won't do something. So it's the
Oh.
difference between I can't and I won't,
Uh-huh.
and the difference that those two different ways of describing particular actions affected the outcome of the goal that they were pursuing. So like
Interesting.
I can't being more about restriction
Yeah.
versus I won't being I identify as somebody who does not do that thing. So I'm going to try and dig
Interesting.
that back up and ramble about that for a little while. So, and then I'm still got the 75 hard stuff coming up.
Oh,
So yeah, got a lot of stuff.
so many
Um,
things.
yeah. Now MFA, what's the latest for you on there? Just rolling with it.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect.
Recording
Sounds
as
like a plan.
inspiration strikes.
Hey, I feel that in my soul. I feel I feel that in my soul.
Yeah.
I truly wonder if folks have even half of the understanding of what a
No,
challenge
I
solo
don't think.
recording is. Yeah. You don't think so?
I don't
Think not
think
a,
so.
I tend to agree with you.
Yeah,
I
because
think
like I'm trying to think of how someone would have that understanding without having your own podcast. People who post on Instagram might understand because it's similar, like thinking about what topic do I want to post about, but it's like a smaller scale on Instagram versus more long form. Um,
I yeah, I would equate it somewhat. Yeah, the parallel I would draw is doing a workout by yourself in a very, very enclosed place with no windows.
why is that the parallel you draw?
Because it's because one, for me, doing a workout by myself in a place is not a problem at all. Like I enjoy
Yes.
that. However, what would make it difficult is if it was a very small, like enclosed place. There's not a lot of distraction or anything. Like it's just
Okay.
Because I think the thing that's that is the most challenging, and I think you touched on this in your most recent episode, is you're putting stuff out there and you've picked a one-sided medium.
Yeah,
So
there's no
you've
loop.
picked, yeah, you've like and that's one of the things that I actually enjoy about solo episodes is that it's an opportunity for me to not be I feel zero obligation to have to respond to the things that I'm saying at the time.
Yeah.
I just want to say what I want to say.
Yeah.
And also, it's like the thing that I enjoy the most is also the thing that can make it very difficult to keep going and stay consistent with it, because
Yeah.
you also are like, well, I do want to have some sort of impact on people. And if you aren't sure that that's actually happening,
Hmm.
then, you know, that extrinsic motivation piece is very, very difficult to come by
Yeah.
with, I mean, for at least for me, like with the size of platform that I have, it's just very, very difficult to come by. And also just continue to go. One of the major drivers for me is something that a friend of mine said to me a while back, a friend of mine who actually started a podcast and then quit.
Oh.
So about a year in, I think they quit.
Hmm.
They just out of the blue, they were like, yeah, it's pretty cool that like your points of view, your perspectives, that stuff will live on for like your kids, your grandkids, your great grandkids, your great 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 grandkids. Like the lineage of your family will never have to wonder what you actually thought
Mm.
based on, what you decide to share. But they'll
Yeah.
never ever have to wonder what you thought about a particular event at a particular time, what you were thinking as you were going through a particular situation, what your opinion was and stuff like that. And for me, that's a decent amount of like, while I'll still show up and press record.
Yeah. I don't have that same motivation because I don't plan on ever having children, so my lineage is done with me.
So even, and that's
but
fair. Yeah. And that's
but
fair.
like I mean I
That's why
do
motivation is
obviously have.
different, or inspiration is different for different people.
Yeah. I do
Yep.
think it's cool that, like, obviously I'm not, well, never say never, but I don't plan on having descendants.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
do have, brothers. I have parents.
Yeah.
My brothers will probably, at least one of them, have kids and stuff. So it's like people I don't see daily
Hmm.
can still like get my thoughts on things, which is cool.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think about it even from the aspect like outside of my own like family. I think about it from the aspect of um and this is something that's on the list of like things to potentially cover one day too, is down the road. Like I did this thing in Chat GPT, and we'll end soon here. I did this thing in
Yeah.
Chat GPT where I was like, what were the top 5 fitness trends in 1978, because I have my birthday coming up near the end of August. And I was
Mm.
like, that'd be interesting to look at top 5 fitness trends when I was born versus
Ooh.
40 something years later.
That would be
And
cool.
what's interesting is there's some stuff that we're still dealing with or still doing,
Yeah.
just in kind of a different format.
Hmm.
And the idea for the prompt came from an acquaintance of mine who is he's an NLP coach, neuro linguistic programming.
Mm.
And he was like, here's a prompt. And the prompt was actually, what were 5 widely held beliefs in the year that I was born that have now been disproven by 2024?
Oh,
And that was like super interesting. Yeah.
that is interesting.
Yeah. So I think to myself, beyond just like, hey, my grandkids, my great grandkids, whatever, they'll be able to always hear like what my point of view was on certain things.
Yeah.
From a fitness standpoint,
Yeah.
somebody 100 years from now could go back and be like, man, that was the most bass-ackwards stuff that he was talking about. Or they may
Yeah.
be like, oh, snap, this is still relevant today.
Yeah.
Because I listen to stuff that was put out like 15 years ago, and it's still relevant today. Even in the personal growth space, that
Oh,
stuff
that makes
is,
sense.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah. like even Eric Thomas, like E.T. the Hip Hop Preacher, has stuff from 10 years ago that is still relevant now. Very relevant. Like you could take the same thing and put it now. My grandfather, who died at like 101,
Whoa.
was talking to me about stuff when I was 13 that
Mm-hmm.
I use with clients now.
You have a really good memory.
He talked about the same things all the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he wasn't like a running, like a running tape all the time.
Yeah.
It's just like everything always came back to super basic foundational stuff.
Mm.
My uncle, same way.
Yeah.
Like he passed a while ago. My dad, same way. Like they get off into different areas and they were all in different fields and things like that. And also the basics, like, they don't change.
No.
They adapt to the environment. So,
Mm-hmm.
all right, cool.
All right.
So with that, you want to run
Yes.
down? Yeah,
So if you don't already, follow us on Instagram at Lifting Running Living Pod, or you can email us at liftingrunninglyvingpod@gmail.com. Let us know if there are any topics or questions you want us to cover. Like we were just saying, it can be challenging to podcast. Send us feedback. Leave a rating and review. You can leave comments now on Spotify, apparently, on podcasts. I don't know if it's different than the comments you could already post on a question.
I think it's the same.
I think it's different.
Okay, maybe not. We'll find out.
Yeah, if you go on Spotify, see, I when I saw it, someone posted about it on like social media or something. And when I went to my Spotify to try to comment on a podcast, I could not comment. But I am wondering if that's because I had not listened. I went to one of our episodes to see if I could add a comment, and I could not.
Oh,
So
okay.
let us know. Leave us a comment.
All right. And with that, we're gonna wrap episode. We're gonna wrap up episode 30. Thank you so much for listening. Take care, and we'll catch you next time.
Goodbye.